What's up everybody? I am Mike and glad to have another DIY video for you. So this time I've been probably waiting about 10 years to build this patio cover, but you know, of course being busy, life gets in the way. I finally did it and it came out pretty cool. So what I basically wanted to do was build something that would cover my whole patio, but since my house is kind of low in the back, it's got like the one-story roof for part of it. It's a two-story house, but the way that the roof comes down doesn't really allow for me to just attach to the house. So what I had to do was build a cover that went a little bit above the roof, and then the rain can run straight off it into the grass, while the rain on my roof gets to drain into the gutters. So either way, it's gonna all work out. It won't be completely closed over the house. There's gonna be about a 2-foot gap, and that's cool because I can get some wind breeze through there, so no big deal. Now the other reason why this project was kind of accelerated is because I want to build a custom car. Some of you guys are familiar with the Vaydor on the G35, and it's amazing. So I got a hold of some parts, and of course you got to do a lot of fiberglass work yourself, those of us that can't afford to buy a supercar. But I think these cars look absolutely amazing, and this new patio cover is going to give me a nice spot to work under so I don't have to clutter up my whole garage and my paint booth with all the fiberglass dust and the stuff that's going to be involved with building this car. So let's get into this patio cover build and hope you guys enjoy the video. So I started this project by installing the poles. Now there were 3 of them that I had to go through the patio and bust up concrete, so that wasn't very fun. The other 3 went in pretty easily, just basically dug holes around the outside of the slab. And when I got to those other 3, I just used a chipping hammer that I got. Of course there's rebar and things involved, so you'll see the way that I fill in the patches later, because I added the concrete on top last so that it would shift with the slab. And then the concrete that goes in the ground will always be there, so it kind of allows the pole to move a little bit independent of the patio, just for any kind of shifting in the foundation in the future. So for the poles that had to go through the concrete, there was a little bit of time spent mapping out exactly where it went. Once I made the measurements and I knew exactly where the square pole was going to be, I marked it out for the 6x6 because that's the size lumber that I used. And then I basically marked out a 20-inch square. So I wanted to have a 20x20 that I cut out. That way it gave me enough room to dig down. Remember, the deeper that you're going to dig, usually you need a little bit of a wider area, or it's just going to be really difficult to get your shovel in and out of there. So the 20x20 square worked out great for that. And you'll be able to see where I just kind of go through the process of doing one of these poles and getting them filled back in with concrete. Now one thing that helped out a lot was using my grinder with a diamond cutting wheel to go through that concrete about an inch or so. And I just wanted to make the square, so that way whenever I use the jackhammer to break through, it's not making a really, it's not a bad break. I mean, it made a really clean break because of that square that I cut out. And a lot of times you might want to work from the middle so that you don't bust such a huge piece out from underneath and then work your way towards that square. That way you're just chipping off the side and you're not making a big crack out from under the bottom of your concrete. You'll notice that when you're jackhammering and you first break that first hole through, a lot of times it's going to break kind of like this. So if you're really close to the edge of your square, you're going to break concrete out from under that. And then if you're breaking more in the center, it'll break out from under it, but then you have a chance to kind of fix it as you move over to the side, and it'll just chip it off. And then whenever you fix your patch, you'll have a lot more of a solid fill instead of this like really uneven thing going on under there. So it's something to keep in mind.
You have to sign a waiver, that's alright, I'm aware of the danger. You wanna get away, you better get in line. Won't go another day of wasting any time. I've got a lot to say, can't hold it in this time. Got no filter, I got no filter. 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 No filter, I got no filter.
Okay, yeah, so I'm finally doing the patio cover. It's been a long time, and you know, I have lots of projects. I did the guest house and the carport, and we're gonna make a go-kart track too. Yeah, there's actually gonna be a go-kart track. Maybe even a roller coaster, a big water slide. I wanna pull the shape of a piano. That would be sweet. Before it's all said and done, I'm gonna put like fire-breathing metal dragons. I'm gonna sculpt them. I'm gonna weld them and build them out of steel. And when you drive in the side driveway, the dragons are gonna breathe fire. Alright, so all 6 poles have been set. So the next step that I did was built double 2x12 beams to go across the top. Now, just the way that I kind of mapped out this whole patio cover, I did 2 16-foot beams that are further from the garage, and then I did 2 14-foot beams, and the measurements just worked out really well that way, as far as placing the poles that were going to be kind of in the middle of the patio, and that's what it really all came down to. If I had put the 16-footers on the other side, it would have made it to where there'd be a pole right in my doorway as I walk out. So I had to think about all those kind of things, and mapping out your poles is definitely important before you get started, because you need to know exactly where that stuff's going to go. So I had 2 16-footers and 2 14-footers, and since they're dual 2x12 on each, I had to glue 2 of them together. I like to do it that way. I don't think everybody does it, but I basically glued 2 of the 16s together, the other 2 16s together. I got my 2 beams that way, and then the same with the 4 14s. I glued them together as pairs to make my beams, and you'll see as I raise the 4 beams one at a time, you'll kind of see what I mean there. Not only did I use glue, I also used big 3-inch roofing screws that you typically use for holding like roof insulation down on flat roofs. So that way those screws could act as a clamp to clamp those boards together while that glue sets up. Now, getting those beams raised up, of course, is kind of tricky. And, you know, people sometimes ask, like, well, do you have help to help you do these kind of things? Now, of course, if there's something crazy, yes, I'm totally cool with getting people to help me. It's not like a pride thing. But something that I've always enjoyed doing, even whenever I was a little kid building little clubhouses and forts in the woods, I always liked to see if there's a way that I could do something safely myself, at least somewhat safely. And get it done without help, because it's not so much like a pride thing or trying to do it quicker. It was, for me, it was more about that challenge and like the logistics of like coordinating how you can pull something off by yourself that should take 3 or 4 people, or a crane or other tools, you know. So yeah, I mean, I could ask for help, but you'll see that I did this whole project pretty much by myself, because I felt like I've done things in the past that were much more difficult, and as long as you put the proper planning into it, or at least look for some kind of a way, a lot of times you can accomplish things on your own. But it comes down to, you know, trying to be a little bit smarter about it rather than just being crazy. Alright, now if you don't do a lot of building, you may not notice it, but this bucket of hardware for the patio covering was about $100. I got my angle brackets, and then of course like hurricane ties for the joists, or the rafters, I guess you'd call them. Box of screws, or lag screws. Now, I've got about another $100 in hardware coming. I ordered some metal plates, some 1/4-inch plate off of eBay, and it's gonna go. You know, it's basically giving you what ties the main beams to the top. I know they sell the 1/8-inch thick ones at the local stores, but I want mine 1/4-inch thick, and I like to drill the holes and build them the way I want them. So I ordered those. All together, I'll probably have about 200 in hardware, maybe a little bit more. So not bad, but if you don't build a lot of things, you may not realize that building materials are really expensive right now. So there we go. So now we're getting some of the rafters up. I don't know, I've been a little confused on whether you would call these joists or rafters. I think you would call it a floor joist if you're actually going to have a floor up there. But since this roof is almost flat, it seems a lot like a joist. But really, if you're thinking roof, it's a rafter. So you can correct me in the comments there if you feel like it. So getting these rafters on, basically I'm spacing them out at 2 feet. There's one on the very ends, and then 2 feet between each. One of the things you'll see that I did is I doubled up these 2x6s that go across at every pole. So the reason I did that is because I'm going to put diagonal braces that go from the pole, and I want them to sandwich perfectly between 2 of the 2x6s. So whether I decided to put bolts through or make some big metal brackets or whatever, I wanted there to be those 2 rafters basically running at my bracing, so that it was going to support that roof a little bit better than just one. Alright, so for diagonal braces, I used kind of a combination of 2x4s and 4x4s. For the 4x4s, you can, just cut them to the right angles or whatever, and then when I had a bunch of 2x4s, I just glued 2 of them together. And I ended up having some 2x4s from taking apart the pallet for this car that I'm going to build. And it was the parts that came on it, so I figured use those 2x4s for something. They were like 10 or 12 feet long, and I mean right now 2x4s are kind of expensive with everything going on in the world. So you'll see that I was gluing some 2x4s together to make some of my diagonal braces, and then the rest ended up being 4x4. Now once you feel like you've gotten to that point where the current state of the project is in good shape and you can move on, for me it was kind of like put on some of these rafters. Now I've got more weight, but now I'm actually able to brace a little bit, and then I could continue moving with the rest of it. So that's kind of where I'm at here. It's just the sequence that I kind of came up. I mean, I'm kind of doing it as I go. I didn't really have a full-on plan on how to pull this thing off step by step, which I never do. It's like you just kind of come up with your best ideas in the moment. But now it's time to get those other 14-foot beams put up, or the 14-foot beams. The others were 16. So these are going to be a little bit lighter, and then I think I kind of have the house to help me. If I needed to set the board on the roof or whatever, it was a little bit easier. But that's what we're doing now. We're getting the other 2 beams up. We're going to carry on across the rest of it. I'm always learning new terms. I think these slats that I'm using across the top, they're 1x4, and that's what my roof material is going to go on. I'm going to go with like the tin roof, and I think every 3 sheets or so I'm going to put polycarbonate, like the one that it's like a tinted clear plastic that you can kind of see through. So at least during the day I'll get like a little bit of skylight through there. I think that might be kind of neat, but the rest of it's going to be tin. So what I'm doing to support that is, instead of putting the tin directly on top of what would be your rafters, because I'm not decking it with plywood, so instead of putting the tin directly on there, I'm using these 1x4 slats across. And like I said, I believe the construction world calls them purlins. And you'll see that throughout the process I'm kind of going through and installing those, because I feel like I don't want that to be something that I get all these rafters up and now I've got like all these purlins to put on. It's kind of nice. I feel like I got to mix it up throughout the process. Sometimes like I'll enjoy throwing up something, but then I'm ready to like try out the next step and kind of see how that's going to go. Also, it's good for building too, because it's better if you've already figured out your method for a certain step, instead of getting there and then realizing that you've got something really difficult that you could have changed, or something that could have helped you along the way, maybe with your previous step. So, you know, if I had noticed like, oh, maybe I should space my rafters or whatever a little bit differently to fit those purlins, it's better to figure things like that out early than when it's too late. So it's a combination of those things, but you'll see that I kind of jump around a little bit, and throughout the process I was putting these purlins on so that they would kind of continue with the rafters, and I would be basically ready to put the roof on shortly after all that was secured. What a beautiful night. So I'm getting the purlins put up. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's like 70 degrees out here, maybe 68, I don't know. I love it. I love doing this at night. There's the carport back there, that the last one that I did kind of like this. This is a patio cover, so woo, getting done. So all these little diamond-shaped brackets, I think they call them hurricane ties. I guess it depends on what brand that you get. But I found that, you know, it's easy to either put your joists or rafters up first and then put the hurricane ties, or you can do it the other way as well. I don't know, I feel like I just like getting the lumber up there, so I threw a bunch of them up there, and then I would, you know, space my ties. I think I was putting them about 2 feet apart, and anywhere there was a post, I was just centering those two over the post, but then I would continue the next one at, you know, making sure it was going to be like 4 feet from the previous one before. So I might have had like one rafter, then say I hit a post, well I just center 2 on that post to where they can hold a 4x4, and then the next one needs to be 4 feet away from that one. So, and always work from one end to the other. I mean, I feel like that works good for me. Of course, this thing was 20 by 30 across, so it worked out well. Like everything I got was, you know, at least in like 10 feet, like my purlins, so I basically put 3 across to get that 30 feet, and they were pretty much perfect. I think I trimmed a few of them on the edges when I was done, but for the most part, this part, you know, it went pretty smooth, and you know, I had them overhanging about 2.5 feet on the front, I believe about 4 feet in the back. So it's really going to be up to you, a lot of these little details, but yeah, put on the you get those rafters standing up, and that's real easy to just put those hurricane ties on. This little lizard has been hanging out with me all day. They never let me get this close. I tried to throw him a June bug a minute ago. Hey, what's up? Okay, he's getting spooked. When he comes back, it's like he runs off for a bit and then he shows up again. I think he likes the little stone. They're so cool. I'm not gonna hurt him. So this roof is going to be covered by using pieces of the corrugated tin, or whatever it is. I guess it's tin. It's kind of that galvanized, like a shiny look. And what I'm doing is running the 2 foot wide pieces that you buy from the lower edge to the higher edge. Now the higher edge of this patio cover is at the house, and then the lower edge is the part that's basically coming out to the yard. And that works out great. The rain's just going to run straight down, you know, that way. It's a very low slope. It's almost like a flat roof. And since it's a 20-foot, not span, I mean, I guess you could say span, but the length from low edge to high edge is 20 feet. So I'm buying the 16-foot tins that are available, and then I'm going to buy some 8-footers, cut them in half, and that's how I'm going to cover that extra 4 feet at the top. Every 4th slat, starting from one side, is going to be the polycarbonate that you can see through. It's kind of like smoked, clear, whatever, smoke tinted. It looks really cool. I like this stuff, and I figured it would offer a little bit of a skylight underneath there, even though I may not really need it. But you'll see that. So basically, it's the polycarbonate and the tin. I only had to buy 3 pieces of that poly because it is about $40 for a 12-foot piece, and I was like, well, 3 is fine. It's spaced out perfectly that it went 3 pieces of tin, poly, 3 pieces of tin, poly, 3 pieces of tin, poly, and then ended with 3 pieces of tin. So it worked out just right.
I'll make it look like I'm losing. Won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless.
So I don't think any of my projects would be a real project for me if I didn't at least get to do some kind of metal work. That's not always true, but it feels like I do end up doing some metal work and everything. In this project, I felt like the 1/8 inch thick brackets that are available at the local stores, they're not really as structural as I'd want them to be. I know if you tied the beams to the top on both sides with those brackets, they're fine. And even on one side, it's going to hold it in place. But I ordered some 1/4 inch plate off of eBay. And what I wanted to do was just make my own brackets to tie the beam on one side to the top of the post. And I figured I could use the 1/8 inch T brackets that you get from the store just on the middle post, as long as I at least had the 1/4 inch brackets on the ends. So all I did was basically drill my own holes and spray paint these things just to kind of give them some coat of protection. If it ever starts chipping, I'm not big on spray paint when it's going to sit outside especially, but usually I'm going to use automotive on it. But if it's something that starts chipping and I don't like it, I'll just paint over it with the color that I'm using on the rest of the cover anyway. So no big deal. That's what we're doing here.
Won't bother hiding my bruises. And when they finally think you're wounded, then it's your chance to be ruthless. Then it's your chance to be ruthless.
It is gorgeous out here tonight. Finishing up the roof. It's a little bit windy. The stars are out. So, beautiful Texas night. We definitely get a lot of those.
So once I knocked out all the big stuff on this one, I kind of just had to go back and tie up all the loose ends. Got the roof done, and then I built a bunch of diagonal braces to go kind of between the poles, and then where I had put 2 of the rafters right there centered on the poles, they're basically going to connect between those 2 rafters and hit the pole. So I think that worked out really well. There were some cases, like you'd seen earlier, I clamped a couple 2x4s together, but I used 4x4 for most of the braces. And that pretty much got it done. Once it was all painted up, everything looked good. And I think the only thing I might go back and do is add some fiber cement siding, because I like to go around the perimeter of the whole thing with at least one piece. That way it's, you know, it covers up the wood and gives me something really nice to paint. It also matches the studio building that also has a carport. So I do want both of these coverings to match, and I think eventually I'm going to do my whole house to kind of match this patio cover as well. I've got a couple new colors picked out. The brown that you see me using is a really nice, like, dark brown, and I actually really like that. It kind of blends with my roof nice, and I'm thinking I'm going to use you know, something kind of a neutral grayish blue color on the rest of the house once I get some other repairs done. So overall, the project was a lot of fun, and I think it came out pretty good. It's definitely made a difference in the amount of heat that hits the back of my house on these hot summer days in Texas. Alright, you guys, another project in the books. I got a few that are coming up that are going to be kind of cool. Let's see, I did a foundation repair, which is kind of neat because the part that I repaired actually, when I had an estimate to have the rest of it done by a professional company, the part that I fixed was actually the part where it matched their zero reference like perfect. And when he sent me the estimate, the corner of the house that I fixed before was the only place where they showed no repairs needing to be done. So I thought it was kind of funny because I didn't have a precision altimeter or anything. I mean, I was basically using levels and my best judgment when I did this. So I'm gonna post a DIY video on that, even though it's not something that I recommend a lot of people taking on unless you really know what you're doing. But I think it'll be kind of cool because there is a lack of do-it-yourself foundation repair for concrete slab videos on YouTube, at least from what I've seen. I was looking for all kinds of help when I try to do this, and I just kind of had to learn. So that's going to be a good one coming up. I also have a lot of footage from a go-kart build that I did from scratch. I always wanted a go-kart with a nice suspension system when I was a kid, so I did it that way. I think that's going to be a pretty cool DIY. And there's another one where a friend of mine needed a pole mounted in her yard for an aerial hoop. I guess there's something called Lyra or Lyra. I want to say she spelled it Lyra. Anyway, it's one of those really cool things. You're basically doing movements and things on a hoop that's hanging, it's suspended in the air. And I built this really cool suspension pole for her. So that's going to be a neat DIY. There's some good welding and even paint stuff in there as well. So stay tuned, and looking forward to seeing you guys again. Make sure that you guys hit like on this video if it did anything good for you. I always appreciate the support and look forward to seeing some comments and seeing you guys around on the YouTube community. Peace out, have a good one, and be safe out there for sure.